Right now, more than half the people who think they'll pick their own retirement date are wrong, and the average miss isn't a few weeks, it's years.
And almost nobody sees it coming until the floor is already gone. Here's the number that should stop you mid-scroll. Most working adults expect to choose the day they walk away from their job.
Government survey data says otherwise. The typical exit happens years before the number people wrote down on their worksheet, and only about 1 in 5 of those early exits was actually a choice.
The rest were forced, a diagnosis, a layoff notice, a parent who suddenly needed full-time care. That's not a retirement.
That's a surprise landing with no runway left underneath you, and here's the part that's genuinely going to bother you. The people this happens to weren't careless.
Most of them had done the homework, a tracked savings percentage, a target birthday circled on a calendar.
A number they were chasing. What almost none of them built was a second plan for the version of the story where the calendar gets ripped up early.
I've spent the last several weeks buried in the primary research on this, the big annual confidence surveys from retirement think tanks, the government trust fund reports, the major brokerage white papers from the firms that manage trillions in retirement accounts, and a stack of academic papers that rarely make it past a footnote in mainstream financial media.
And what emerged wasn't a single problem.
It's 3 distinct forces, each one capable by itself of wrecking a retirement, and together they're stacking up across the exact same 15-year stretch that covers nearly everyone currently in
Their late 30s through their late 50s. I'm going to walk you through all 3 of them.
And I'll explain exactly why the advice you've heard 1,000 times, max the account, wait for the right age, lean on a fixed withdrawal percentage, is missing an entire chapter. The chapter
where you don't get to pick your exit, because statistically the odds say you probably won't. Why does this catch so many smart, careful people off guard? Because retirement planning is dressed up
to look like arithmetic, the kind you can solve once and file away. Punch in a balance, a savings rate, an assumed return, a target year, and out comes a number. The number looks solid. You breathe.
Easier, but that number is quietly a bet that 5 completely unrelated systems will all behave for the next 15 or 20 years. Your body, your employer's next reorg, the market,
Government and the insurance industry. History is not kind to 5 system bets, and the way those systems tend to fail together sits buried in datasets that basically no retirement calculator I've
ever opened bothers to account for. Here's the picture I keep returning to. Imagine you've charted a road trip. Destination, retirement, arriving on schedule at a clean, round age. Skies look fine on
the map. The tank reads full. But here's the catch about that fuel gauge. Researchers have quietly documented for years that it tends to read 3 to 5 years more optimistic than reality. And
somewhere past the bend in the road, hidden from where your headlights reach, sits a stretch of terrain nobody marked on the map, a multi-year gap with no employer health coverage, a public program
that hasn't kicked in yet, an insurance marketplace in 2026 where the price supports that used to keep monthly premiums bearable just disappeared, and a federal retirement fund working against a
countdown clock that most people treat as some far-off government abstraction. This is not a distant abstraction, some bureaucratic footnote you can safely ignore for another decade. I'll hand you
the actual date later in this video, and I'll break down why I'll just work a couple extra years to catch up. Might be the single riskiest sentence in personal finance, but first, the real shape of this problem, because it's not shaped the way most people picture it. There's a case I keep coming back to. Call him Marcus, 50, 3 years old, roughly $250 million sitting in his
workplace account and a plan that looked airtight on paper. 12 years of runway left before his target birthday at 65. He planned to keep the contributions maxed, hold the line on
discipline, and steadily shrink whatever gap remained. His financial advisor signed off on the math. His spouse was on board with the timeline. He felt, in his words, on track. At 56, Marcus
tore his rotator cuff falling from a ladder while cleaning gutters. Nothing life-threatening, but it sidelined him from the physically demanding side of his job for 4 months, while he was
recovering. His company quietly restructured. He came back to a role that no longer existed in its old form, and the replacement offer paid roughly 15% less. He took it because the job
market for someone his age in his field wasn't nearly as forgiving as he'd once assumed it would be back when he first drew up the plan. His target birthday slid. 12 years became 15.
Updated his spreadsheet and moved on. 18 months after that, a second layoff wave hit, and this time Marcus was on the list. He was 58. He had roughly 14 months of cash outside.
His retirement account and his workplace savings couldn't be touched without a penalty for 18 more months. His spouse, 55, had been out of the paid workforce for a decade caring for family. Marcus wasn't reckless. His math was correct. His timeline just wasn't in charge. His story didn't end in disaster. He found his footing eventually, picked up consulting work, and trimmed
the household budget harder than he'd ever had to before. But notice what actually broke, not the arithmetic. The arithmetic was fine. What broke was the silent assumption baked into every spreadsheet that nothing would knock the trajectory sideways before the target date arrived. Something did 3 years early, and the space between 58 and 65 ended up costing far
More than any work she'd had budgeted for. Here's the twist I want you sitting with. You've probably assumed the core issue is that people simply don't save enough. That's real, but it's not the
deepest layer. The deeper issue is this. Nearly every retirement plan gets built around a finish line most people will never reach purely on their own terms. You can save the textbook. Perfect amount.
For a retirement that starts at 67 and still land short because your actual start date showed up unannounced at 61 and nothing in your model was built to expect the early arrival.
Government survey data consistently shows a majority of workers stop working earlier than their stated plan, most often for reasons outside their control. Large-scale retirement studies put the
typical actual exit age a full 3 years ahead of the commonly cited traditional benchmark. Among people who left early, health issues topped the list of reasons, with job loss and caregiving close
behind. Only a small minority, roughly 1 in 5, left early purely because they'd hit their number and chose to. Confidence surveys from major retirement research groups show workers expect on
average to retire around 65. The actual median exit lands closer to 62. That 3-year gap between plan and reality has held steady across decades of surveys through different
economies, different generations, different headlines. Here's a related trap. 3 out of 4 current workers say they intend to earn income during retirement to help bridge any shortfall. Fewer
Then 1 in 3 retirees actually manage to pull that off. The idea of patching the hole with part-time work sounds tidy right up until you're 60. 2, with a new physical limitation in the local
job market has quietly moved on without you. Every single day, thousands of Americans exit the workforce for good. The overwhelming majority didn't choose the date on the calendar, so check your own
runway right now, because what comes next changes the actual dollar figure you need to be planning around, and it's not a minor adjustment. Let me introduce a second thread, one I'll return further down since it grounds all of this in something real. A friend, I'll call her Alina, is 52. She works with a financial advisor, has roughly $340,000 saved, a target retirement age of
65 and a believable path to $800,000 by then. She's organized, thorough, has done more homework than almost anyone I know personally. I'll return to her numbers shortly because they
illustrate something important. Before that, though, the 3-part cost trap. This is the second mechanism, and it inflicts the heaviest damage on people who genuinely make it close to their planned finish line. 3 separate costs converge at almost the exact moment someone exits the workforce. Individually, each is manageable. Together, they're why a majority of new retirees report being blindsided by how expensive the transition actually was. Cost 1, the healthcare bridge. This is the window between the statistically typical exit age of 60, 2, and the start of public health coverage at 65, roughly 3 years, and here's what that window costs right now. Enhanced subsidies that had kept marketplace insurance affordable for years quietly expired at the close of last year and weren't renewed. That means the old subsidy cliff is back in force. Anyone earning above a fairly modest income threshold pays full freight for coverage, and in some regions
that runs past $1,500 monthly right at 62. Using standard age-based pricing multipliers, average benchmark premiums climb from roughly $1,700 a month
62 toward a bit over $1,100 by 63 and settle near $1,100 to $1,200 through the mid-60s.
That's $12,000 to $13,000 a year per person in
Premiums alone, before deductibles, before copays, before a single prescription. One major brokerage research pegs average lifetime health care spending for a couple retiring at 60. 5 new
$330,000 covering premiums, out-of-pocket costs, and prescriptions, and that figure still excludes long-term care entirely, which deserves its own video. Exit at 62 instead of 65. And you're layering roughly $36,000 in unbudgeted premium costs onto the very front end of retirement, exactly when the risk from a poor early sequence of returns runs highest, and every withdrawn
dollar loses any chance to compound. If you've got a spouse in the same boat, double almost every figure in that paragraph, because marketplace plans price per person, not per household.
Healthcare gap doesn't wait for you to be ready for it. Cost 2, Social Security timing. Claim before your full retirement age and your monthly check gets permanently trimmed by as much as 30%.
For most people working today, full retirement age sits at 67. Wait until 70 and your benefit tops out around 124% of the full amount, with no further
growth after that. This year, the top monthly payout for someone claiming right at full retirement age runs a bit over $4,000. Push it to 70 and it's closer to 50, 100.
Claim at 62 instead, and that maximum drops to roughly $2,700 a month for life. That's not a scheduling choice. That's a permanent income decision. Unlike a portfolio, this
benefit cannot hit zero, and it cannot crash in a bad market year. Delay past full retirement age, and you're earning a guaranteed 8% increase per year, backed by federal law. No index fund
anywhere on earth offers a guaranteed 8% just for patients. Cost 3 is the quiet one because it never arrives as a bill. It's the compounding you simply never got to keep. Half a
decade of missing contributions, stacked on top of half a decade of missing growth. Take a moderate earner pulling $120,000 a year, saving 15% $18,000 annually. Lose the 5 years
Between 60 and 65, and that's $90,000 in raw contributions gone, which at an average 8% return would have compounded to roughly $135,000 by the finish line. Layer on the growth.
You lose on money you already had, $400,000 sitting at age 60, left alone for 5 more years at 8%, becomes roughly $611,000. Forced out at 60 instead, you retire with $400,000 from that pot, not $611,000. At a standard 4% withdrawal rate, that gap alone costs you close to $8,500 in annual income year after year for as long as you live. Quick pause. If this kind of
breakdown is useful to you, tap like on this one. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people who need to see it. So, tallying the 3-part cost trap, the healthcare bridge adds roughly
$36,000 in unplanned premiums during those opening 3 years alone. Claiming the government benefit too early permanently shrinks monthly income, potentially by hundreds or even over $1,000
a month for as long as a person lives, and the 5-year compounding shortfall can exceed $300,000 for a median earner's trajectory. All three lean on the same broken assumption that
person can simply work a little longer to close any gap. That assumption is the miscalibrated fuel gauge from earlier, and it fails exactly when people need it most. Like this video right now, if it
changed how you're thinking about your own timeline. And if you're new here, this is Winds of Thought. Subscribe, because the next one goes even deeper into the withdrawal. Rate math we only
scratch the surface of today. Now go check your own retirement runway starting today.